Learning starts, gifts unfold. In every child, nurture growth. Find their way, hopeful minds, futures bright. 7 voices, strong and clear. Education's change begins with us. Whole child learning, we embrace from our home to your own.
Have you ever looked at your child's school and wondered, is this really enough? As a mom and an educator, I started seeing some red flags that I just can't ignore. Hi everyone, I'm Lauren. I'm a mom of 8 with 7 still living at home. I'm also an educator with over 20 years of experience. Welcome to Society 7, a podcast where we explore the evolving landscape of education. I've created this podcast, Society 7, because I'm increasingly concerned about the direction of our education system and its impact on our children's futures. The name Society 7 comes from the idea that siblings, like my 7 children at home, form their own society. They look out for each other, they create their own support system, and that's what I want for this podcast to be, a support system and a place we can look out for each other and all of our children. I want to create a community where we can have open and honest conversations about what the education system should look like. My mission is to help parents and educators advocate for a more personalized and effective education system, one that truly recognizes and nurtures the unique gifts of every child. Today, I want to share my personal story and some of the red flags that I've seen and the worries that I have as a parent. So, as a mother of 8, I've navigated a wide range of educational needs. I have 1 child on a 504 plan, 2 children with ALPs. So, those of you who aren't familiar, those are advanced learning plans or gifted and talented plans. Another who we've started on an IFSP, so an individualized family service plan. So that is a child who is younger than 3, but has been identified with some needs. So they're not old enough for an IEP, but still might need some extra care and support. But those are all things that I had to advocate for. And I have a master's degree in education. And so I'll just give a little bit of background. These experiences have given me a very close-up view of how varied children's needs can be and how hard it can be to get those needs met. And one thing I've noticed over the years is that my children are all very well behaved, and their educational needs sometimes were often overlooked, and their gifts were missed, and their lack of understanding was missed. And I had to be a really strong advocate to make sure that they got what they needed. And I feel like having a master's in education helped me with the knowledge and the tools to advocate for my children, but it also makes me really worried about the parents who don't have that background and the families who don't have the background in education or the time. I worry about the families and the parents who are working full time, who don't have the time or the knowledge to navigate the educational systems. And I worry about the children falling through the cracks. During the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, I was an assistant principal, and I saw firsthand how many families and parents were unaware of their children's academic struggles. And parents would say things like, I had no idea that my child was this far behind, or I didn't realize that my child didn't understand this. And it was a real eye-opener, and it highlighted the communication gap between schools and parents and teachers, and how much can be missed when parents don't have an inside view of their children's education. And this underachieving gap was seen, during COVID, and not just from COVID, but these gaps were there. And I feel like COVID just shined a light on them. But they were there before. And with my oldest daughter, she's a freshman in high school and she only has 3 years left until graduation. And I have a real sense of urgency with her because I worry whether or not she's truly prepared for what comes after graduation for her. And it's not just about academics, it's life skills and adaptability and emotional resilience and, you know, relationships. And this has led me to do a deep dive into research, and I'm trying to understand, the landscape of higher ed and the workforce and what will this look like in just a few years and what skills will be most valued, what knowledge will be essential, what are her skill sets and everything. And it's not just about her. I also, I'm trying to take into account on the younger end, the two of my youngest children who aren't even in elementary school. And that's where I see the biggest opportunity. I wonder what we can do now to lay a foundation for them to shape their educational journey so that they have a world that's more supportive and conducive to their success. And now I'm asking myself, how can I be on this podcast and how can we proactively build a better future for them? How can we shift the paradigm so that they can, by the time they reach adulthood, how are they not facing the same challenges that we're seeing today? How can we equip them and their future so then they have the tools to not just survive adulthood, but how can they truly thrive? And how can we create a world where their individual gifts are not just recognized but nurtured? And then where do we even start? And what are some of the key issues that I see, in the education system? First off, lack of individualization. Let me just pause right there. Because one of the things is I'm going to tell you a story really quickly. My oldest daughter, when I was trying to advocate for her to get her 504, I had mentioned earlier that my children are really well behaved. And I think it was the time she was in 4th grade. We go to parent-teacher conferences every year. And it's always the same thing at parent-teacher conferences. Your child is so amazing. We wish we had a classroom of 25, 30 of your children. We don't really have any concerns. Maybe some testing, they don't do very well in testing, but overall, behavior is wonderful. Same conversation every single year. Every year. And then by the time I get to middle school, and we have had this conversation every single year, I ask the middle school teachers, how do you know that my child understands what's going on in the classroom? Because the middle school teacher said to me, I'm not sure if the work is too easy for your child. But then what I see at home is my child's really stressed out. And my child is struggling with friendships. And my child is having a hard time navigating relationships. So, although on the outside, my child's keeping it together at school and is well behaved, when my child is at home, I'm seeing that they're struggling at school. And my question to the teacher was, how do you know that my child is understanding? How do you know that instead of it, being really easy to my child, maybe my child has no idea what you're talking about. Maybe my child has been, I hate to say this, but like, maybe my child has been taught to just be well behaved. My child has been taught to be well mannered, and so because my children know how to behave, that looks like they understand. And it was the first time that I think the middle school teachers were like, oh, I guess we didn't think that just because your child was sitting there, that it meant that they didn't understand. They didn't ask. Your child didn't say, oh, we don't understand. But in middle school, my child's not going to tell you that they don't understand. My child's not going to admit that in a classroom of 20-something peers. So that was the process of me starting to like advocate to say, okay, well, I would like you to do some assessments, and I would like you to look into it for us. If my child every single year is not doing well on assessments, if you're telling me, and that's a whole nother topic that we will get into on a later date. But if you're telling me every single year that my child is not understanding, but is well-mannered, then we're going to have a different conversation. And so I had to be an advocate, and I had to, start to have the conversation with my child at home to say, what are the things that are going really well, and what are the things that we're struggling with? And those weren't the funnest conversations to have, especially, with hormones and in those middle school ages. And so as an educator, I do worry for those families that maybe don't have the background and don't know what to look for and don't know what to ask for and don't know what to say and are kind of just going through the motion. And I'm hoping that we can start to have these conversations and raise awareness, because it might help others out there. If you are a parent or if you are a student, I would love to hear any of your red flag stories. So share them below. So, if you were to ask me, what are some of the key issues that I see in the current education system? Well, I see a lack of individualization, especially when we look at a system that prioritizes standard testing over genuine learning, because I see a system that doesn't recognize gifts of children, and it misses when children are truly struggling, because we are, sometimes we're just looking to see whether or not you know how to take a test and whether or not you are taught test taking skills. I had a conversation with my sister a couple weeks ago, and I asked her, when you look back at high school, and granted, my sister is 10 years younger than I am, and when you looked back at high school, you know, what do you think you got out of it? And she's like, I learned how to take a test. Like, it's amazing. I didn't, but but I want people to look and see, you know, instead of looking at our education system and thinking like, oh, wonderful, I learned how to take a test or how to stay focused for 2 hours so I could read questions. I want them to really be able to hone in on, you know, I'm an artist, or I can read something, and I don't know, I think of one of my children who's an amazing artist who can, you know, read a poem and, you know, draw a picture or, you know, create a scene based off that poem. And I'd rather that be the assessment than, you know, doing multiple choice questions for hours based off of the standardized testing. I think another example is, you know, right now, a big thing that we see in education is like the mental health crisis. And I feel like the lack of focus on social emotional learning is a huge red flag. And in early childhood, you know, so much of it, we focus on social emotional learning. And in order for you to be successful in kindergarten and for you to be ready to go to kindergarten, for you to learn academics, you have to have that social emotional learning and pre-academic skills in order for you to focus on academic skills. And so sometimes I wonder, you know, do we need to focus more on social emotional learning as a whole? You know, children need to learn how to regulate their emotions and how to communicate effectively and know how to build healthy relationships. I feel like there's so many adults that still need to know how to learn how to regulate their emotions and how to communicate effectively and how to build healthy relationships. And maybe because they didn't learn those things as children, that's why they're still struggling with these skills. And these skills are just as important as academic knowledge. And my biggest worry is that our children are not being prepared for the real world. And I worry that they're going to be graduating without these critical thinking skills and these problem solving skills and the adaptability that they're going to need to succeed and to be successful adults. And I worry about the pressure that they're under and all of these mental health challenges that they'll face and the lack of support that they'll receive. And I worry about them being able to find their place in this world that's constantly changing.
Look, the second child's pretty straightforward after the first. And once you've got two, you're already completely screwed. So you might as well have three. And then the kids start to take care of each other, by the way, too, which is something that parents don't understand, is that if you have 8 kids, it's not like you're taking care of 8 kids. The kids start to form their own society and take care of each other.
Society 7, learning starts, gifts unfold. In every child, nurture growth, find their way. Hopeful minds, futures bright. 7 voices, strong and clear. Education's change begins with us. Whole child learning, we embrace from our home.